I'm gonna warn you that this video is a little less like my normal ones and a little more like a rant, because this has been a pretty frustrating and emotional week for me, as I'm sure it's been for a lot of you. I'm having a hard time getting my thoughts down in a cogent, incoherent way. Obviously, this mostly has to do with the events down in Wisconsin. I've already made a video about what it's like to be Black in America, how I feel about the Black Lives Matter protests and the police. So instead of trying to rehash that all over again, I'm going to link the video in the description below and in this video. So you can go seek that out if you're curious. Instead, I'm going to try to answer a question that I found myself asking a lot as I watched this week's Republican National Convention. And that is, what the hell do Republicans stand for anymore? Sure, most Republicans would answer this question with most of the normal tropes. Republicans stand for America. They stand for freedom, liberty, low taxes, God, conservative values, all of that good stuff. But it's becoming harder and harder to justify those claims by looking at what Republicans choose in the ballot box. One would think that you could go to the Republican National Convention to see a presentation of what Republicans have fought for and gained through President Trump. But then one would be pretty confused when at the Republican convention, they see a presentation of America that is completely divorced from reality. Because for a week, most of what they did is present us with an alternate reality of what America is. It's a reality where 14.5 million Americans aren't out of work. A reality where 180,000 Americans didn't unnecessarily die from a mismanaged pandemic. A reality where we aren't far behind the rest of the developed world in developing a COVID-19 testing system. A reality where Donald Trump is a protector of Americans with pre-existing conditions instead of our reality where he is suing and trying to push policy after policy to strip Americans of those protections. A reality where Donald Trump signed into law the Veterans' Choice Bill instead of Barack Obama. A reality where Donald Trump wants to fund police departments and not the one we live in, where he is trying to strip cities and states of the tax revenue they need to fund the police. A reality where Donald Trump has built a glorious wall that doesn't exist. And a reality where Donald Trump is a defender and proponent of legal immigration instead of the one we live in, where he spent the last 3 years trying to diminish it. And that's just some of the revisionism that Trump says about himself. Then there's all the lies that he tells about Joe Biden and his opponents. He says that Joe Biden wants to defund the police, even though all of Biden's policies increase funding to the police, much to the chagrin of many people on the left. He says that Joe Biden wants open borders with no evidence. He says that Joe Biden wants to repeal the Second Amendment and confiscate your guns with no evidence. He tells more lies about Joe Biden and Ukraine. He claims that Joe Biden oversaw an abysmal economic recovery, even though him and Obama built the economy that Trump has spent the last 3 years trying to take credit for. In order to make his audience fear and hate Joe Biden, Donald Trump has to create a fictional version of Biden that only exists in the minds of himself and some of his supporters. Then there's the ridiculous fear-mongering about this hypothetical America under Joe Biden's leadership. The America where there's violence on the streets and everything's been turned into a socialist hellhole, where Americans have been stripped of their ability to protect themselves from danger. This is where Trump gets to use his favorite tactic, projection. Trump warns about Biden's America being some Trojan horse for this radical political agenda. Meanwhile, Trump's playing patty cake with dictators and pushing away our allies. He's using the White House and the powers of his office for his own political campaign. He fires every inspector general who tries to exercise any oversight over the executive branch. You have QAnon weirdos winning Republican primary after Republican primary. Mitch McConnell's pushing through over 50 judges, many of who are completely unqualified to fill the roles that they'll have for their entire life. You have them passing trillions of dollars in taxes with no way to pay for them. Trump himself has lied over 20,000 times since he became president. He warns of radical political agenda, but this is the most radical political behavior that I've ever seen in my lifetime. He warns about Biden's America, where no one's safe in their communities. Ask the 180,000 people who have already died from COVID how safe we are. He warns about Biden's America, where Americans can't defend themselves. Ask Breonna Taylor how well we're able to defend ourselves now, even in our own homes. He warns of Biden's America, where there's violence on the streets. What about the violence that led to Kenosha, the violence in Charlottesville, the violence in Parkland, the violence that Trump encourages at his rally, the violence that actually happens at Trump's rallies? Violence is emblematic of Trump's America. Trump warns about Biden's America, where the economy is in shambles. Ask the 14.5 million Americans who can't find work right now how good the economy is doing. When Trump tries to scare us with this dystopian, hypothetical Biden's America, all he does is describe Trump's America. He just talks about how things are right now under his watch. If conservative values are the things that Republicans really care about, then it would stand to reason that they might be dissatisfied with being lied to about the state of the country. But they're not. They embrace the lies. So what do Republicans stand for? They can't stand for fiscal responsibility. Under Trump, the deficit has grown to a record $2.81 trillion. They can't stand for jobs. Over the last 3 years of the Obama administration, job growth outpaced the first 3 years of the Trump administration, and that was before the pandemic. They don't stand for draining the swamp. Trump has hired more lobbyists to work in the White House than Obama did during his entire 8 years. They don't stand for small government or free markets, because now Trump gets to decide which American companies and farmers get to participate in international trade. And he'll go on Twitter to try to ruin your business if he thinks you're being mean to him, like he did with Goodyear. They don't stand for law and order. Trump has more associates in prison or on trial than he has had wives, which is saying something. And that's the other thing. They don't stand for family values. Trump was paying off a porn star to be quiet about the affair he was having with her while his third wife was pregnant with their child. So what do they stand for? Well, during the Republican National Convention, I think it was made pretty clear. They stand for birtherism. I'm not just talking about the racist birtherism that Trump uses to question the legitimacy of people like Barack Obama and Kamala Harris. I'm talking about the birtherism that they use to question whether or not people that disagree with them are real Americans at all. And this is what the convention was really all about. It was about telling his supporters, you're real Americans, and they're not. They're dangerous turncoats, and they're out to destroy you. The only thing standing between you and them is me, and they know it, so you have to vote for me. It's the most dangerous kind of demagoguery, and it was never more apparent than when these two were on TV. These are the Mulkowskis. They became famous on the right and infamous with everyone else when they were caught on camera pointing a rifle and a handgun at protesters who were passing by their home. They instantly became Second Amendment heroes and victims of the liberal mob. There's only one problem. The Second Amendment does not protect your ability to wantonly point a gun at anyone who's in your field of vision. Regardless, the way the RNC tells it, the McCloskeys were within a hair's breadth of losing their lives. Except the protesters weren't threatening them. They weren't even on their property. They were passing by on their way to demonstrate in front of the mayor's home. But that's not really what the convention was about. It wasn't about real victims, it was about airing grievances. And that's what they were doing with their guns. They weren't defending themselves, they were airing their grievances. And they were doing it in a way that a lot of Republican voters can identify with. And that's why the RNC celebrates them. But there's a big problem there. There's a big cost there. Because when you celebrate people like these, you end up with people like this. When Trump first became president, I likened it to rolling coal. If you don't know what rolling coal is, it's when people modify diesel trucks to make the exhaust pump out big clouds of black smoke. It doesn't have any significant improvement to the truck or anything like that. It's actually kind of a dangerous pollutant, but they don't really care. In fact, not caring is sort of the point. It's a way for them to assert themselves into the consciousness of others and give them the big middle finger. And that's what a lot of people were doing when they voted for Trump. They were asserting themselves and giving politics the middle finger. They were rolling coal. They were owning the libs. And they did that. They pissed off a lot of liberals. But now the joke's over. You're not just owning the libs anymore. You're forsaking your neighbors. You're condemning fellow Americans. When you vote for a man who tweets that cities who vote Democrat are mentally ill and deserve to rot, you're talking about people that you claim to love. Your sisters, your brothers, your daughters, your sons, your cousins, your nieces, your nephews. You're calling into question whether or not they deserve the same rights that you claim to hold dear. That wasn't the Republican National Convention. The Republican Party as a political party doesn't exist anymore. That was the Trump convention. It exists for his grift. The grift to launder their power grab through your votes, using the contempt that you have for people who you don't identify with. Stop giving them a market for that. I know that there are people who voted for Trump specifically for this reason, and they'll do it again because they actually really do believe that they're true Americans and I'm not. I don't really know what to do about them, but I also know that there's a lot of folks who voted for Trump and who don't know to vote for this time, who don't really want to sign up for the birtherism. And those are the people that I'm talking to right now. Those are the folks that this video is for. Look, I know that we're different in plenty of ways. I'm a millennial that lives in a major West Coast city, but we're both Americans. I'm a liberal, but I really do believe in a lot of the fundamental ideals that this country was framed around, just like you. Sure, I don't think that there's a God, and I don't think that the Bible accurately portrays our origin story or should dictate our lives, but I have no interest in infringing on your religion. I do believe that women deserve the right to make certain reasonable decisions around whether or not they should go through with a pregnancy, but I don't support infanticide. And yeah, sometimes I get disappointed in a lot of the behavior of other Americans, and I don't think that we should be proud of every part of our history. But I do love this country, and I am proud to be an American, just like you. Most importantly, I'm committed to a future America that's better than the present, just like you. I honestly believe that we share enough values to work on that future together, and that's what America's supposed to be about. But it's going to be impossible if we keep voting for political leaders who are hell-bent on maximizing the contempt between us. If the president's best skill is owning the libs, you'll get a lot of disenfranchised Americans, but you're not going to get a lot of work done. We have a lot of work to do. I'm not going to beat around the bush here. I know what I'm asking you is a big ask. I'm asking you to vote for Joe Biden. But we also had that in mind when we nominated him. We wanted to give you somebody that was pretty easy to vote for. Trump spent the last 3 years trying to convince you that liberals want some godless, radical, extreme socialist as president. And we offered you Joe Biden. He's a devout Catholic and a pathological centrist. Trump's trying to draft soldiers into his forever culture war. Do your country a favor. Do what Trump would do. Just dodge it. And if your friends give you crap, tell them it's not that you hate America, you just had bone spurs. Thanks for stopping by for another video. This has been a really tough week, which is saying a lot for a year like this. Putting this video together did help me a little bit work through my emotions and my thoughts, so I don't know, maybe watching it helped you a little too. Either way, I really appreciate you giving me the time. Like the video and subscribe to the channel if you wouldn't mind. Share it with your friends, it's always a big help. As always, have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday.